Hey guys, tonight we step into the dark, suffocating depths of the 1800s coal mines. Imagine yourself waking before the crack of dawn, your body sore from the day before, your eyes still heavy with sleep. The air is chilly, but you don't have the luxury of staying in bed. You've got to get to work. You, along with countless other children, trudge down the narrow muddy paths toward the entrance of the mine, that gaping hole in the earth that seems to swallow light and life. The air smells of dampness and earth, tinged with something metallic, but mostly it smells like fear. Your hands are small, and your legs are weaker than those of the adults, but you still have to carry the heavy bags that weigh down your tiny shoulders. Every step you take toward the mine feels like another step away from the innocence of childhood. Another step deeper into a harsh reality where the work is unrelenting, the dangers numerous, and the chances of seeing daylight before your shift is over are slim. As you reach the entrance, you can hear the rumble of the mine in the distance, the constant sound of picks against stone, of machinery grinding away, the eerie echoes of the men who toil away in the darkness. But your role isn't to wield the pickaxe like the adults. No, you have a different job, one that's just as vital but no less terrifying. You are one of the child miners who will spend the day underground, doing what the grown men cannot do, often in spaces too small for their bodies. You feel the coolness of the stone walls as you squeeze your way through the low entrance tunnel, your heart pounding in your chest as the light from the surface fades behind you. Once inside, the air is thick, filled with dust so fine it feels like it's part of you, slipping into your lungs and coating your skin. The further you go into the mine, the darker and more suffocating it becomes. And so begins your day working as a child miner in a world that feels completely alien, where time is measured by the bells that mark your shifts, and where survival is the ultimate goal. For many of these children, the mine becomes their world. The earth, the coal, and the darkness are their daily companions. For most, the grind of child mining is endless, often stretching from dawn until nightfall, with only brief moments of rest. But it's not just the physical labor that's difficult to bear. No, it's the danger that comes with every step you take, the threat of cavernous, the exposure to harmful gases, and the endless back-breaking labor that your small, fragile body can barely withstand. Yet, you have no choice. You do what you must to survive, to help your family. You may not even have a clear idea of what a normal childhood is like, because this has been your reality for as long as you can remember. Survival in this world doesn't mean you get to play, dream, or enjoy the sunshine. Survival means working, and working some more. So, take a deep breath. Remember, this isn't your average story of hardship. As you step deeper into the mine, you trudge along, adjusting to the weight of childhood lost to the coal mines. The light of day fades, and what you're left with is the oppressive darkness of your fate. As you push forward, the dark tunnel swallows you whole. You try to focus on the small flickers of light, the candles flickering faintly in the distance, the occasional shout from another child working nearby. Each breath is a struggle, each step a reminder that the world is much, much bigger than your small body. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let's ease into tonight's journey together as the bells toll, signaling the start of another grueling shift. You are already feeling the weight of the day ahead. Child miners like you weren't just expected to work long hours. They were expected to endure, to survive, and to keep working, no matter how much the body screamed for rest. The typical day for a child miner began before sunrise and would continue well past sunset, stretching into 14-hour workdays. You stumble out of bed, exhausted, and make your way back to the mine entrance, already feeling the fatigue of the previous day's labor pulling at your small bones. But there is no time for rest, no room for weakness. The mine waits for no one. Inside, the air is thick with dust and the weight of unspoken fear. You wonder, sometimes, if this is what life has become, trudging through endless, dark tunnels, each step taking you farther from a world of light. Your body feels as though it's being broken down slowly by the hours, the days, the weeks of relentless work. Your hands ache from gripping tools too large for you, your back too small to carry the weight you're forced to endure. But you don't stop. You've learned that stopping means failure, and failure means punishment. The work is endless digging, shoveling, and carrying heavy loads of coal from one end of the mine to the other. Machines whir and grind in the distance, but for you, it's all about the manual labor, all about the work that has been thrust upon you because you were born small enough to fit into the narrow tunnels and tight spaces that no adult could navigate. Role as a child miner doesn't just involve carrying the heavy load. It also means working in dangerous, unsanitary conditions. The air you breathe is full of coal dust, which settles in your lungs, leaving behind the permanent mark of black lung disease. But this is something you've accepted. It's the price you pay for survival. Coughing fits become routine. Try to ignore the sharp pain in your chest, the way your breath grows more shallow with every passing hour. But you can't stop. Not now. The shift stretches on. Time becomes meaningless when you're buried beneath the earth, working in the dark. The only markers of time are the sound of the bells that ring at intervals, signaling when you can briefly rest, when you can take a sip of water from the filthy bucket, or when you can gnaw at the cold, hard bread that you've brought along in your meager lunch pail. As the hours pass, your body grows more and more weary, and the sense of time slips away. You've long lost track of the sun, the seasons, the days of the week. It's as if the mine has swallowed time. There's only the endless rhythm of work, the monotony of labor, and the ever-present buzz of machinery that surrounds you. You push through the fatigue, through the aching muscles, and the oppressive heat, because the only way to make it through is to keep going, one step after another. In many ways, you've become like the machines themselves, endlessly functional, but with a cost. The physical toll is becoming more apparent now. Your hands are rough and scarred from gripping tools and hauling the coal. Your legs are stiff from crouching in the tunnels for hours on end. You feel your body growing weaker, but there is no one to turn to for relief. The only time you can think of rest is when the shift ends, but even then, it's a fleeting respite. The miners around you are worn out, but there's no time to stop. Your family needs the money, and the cycle of work must continue. You return to your makeshift bed, exhausted, only to rise again and repeat the process the following day. And so the hours drag on, day after day, until the only thing you remember about your childhood is the dust, the darkness, and the feeling of your bones aching under the strain. But you know there's no escape. For you, and for all the child miners around you, this is life. The bell rings again. It's time to return to the mine. You've worked for hours, and yet the end is nowhere in sight. The shift continues, just as it has for countless others like you. in a world of labor, sacrifice, and endless toil. But somehow, through it all, you survive. It's what you've been trained to do, survive. As you make your way to the mine entrance once again, a sense of dread hangs in the air. The daylight is already fading, and it's clear that this will be your world for the next several hours, perhaps longer. You arrive at the entrance, but it's not an entrance you can pass through easily. It's more of a gate into another realm, one that's dark, narrow, and dangerous. Even the very ground beneath you seems to quiver, as though the earth is alive with the weight of centuries of labor, struggles, and lost souls. The entrance itself is a jagged hole in the earth, a sharp crack in the rock that yawns open, swallowing everything in its path. You stare at the tunnel's mouth, the black maw that promises only one thing: darkness. No light can break through here, no matter how hard you try. There are no lamps hanging overhead, no windows to allow a glimpse of the world outside. This is a world that exists only in the shadows. You step forward, feeling the weight of years in this very place. There's a chill in the air as you crawl down on your hands and knees. The stone walls press close on either side of you, tight and claustrophobic, and every breath feels heavy, thick with dust and earth. Your chest tightens as you shuffle through the narrow opening, your back hunched, knees scraping against the sharp rocks beneath you. The air inside the tunnel feels thicker than it should, stale, full of the lingering scent of sweat and coal. It's unnatural. You take a deep breath, and the dust fills your lungs, making you cough. Your eyes water from the sting, but there's no time to stop. You have to keep moving. If you don't, there's a good chance you'll get in trouble with the foreman, or one of the older miners, or worse, risk being left behind in the dangerous, unprotected sections of the mine. There's a persistent, grinding noise echoing through the mine, constant, unrelenting, the sound of picks, hammers, and the squeal of metal against stone. Every step you take echoes in the vast emptiness of the mine, but still, you keep moving, because this is your life, now, this never-ending cycle of darkness and hard labor. After a few minutes, you reach the area where you'll work. It's cramped, almost impossibly small. You'll spend most of your time crouched down, your back aching from being hunched over. But that's the only way to reach the coal seams. The air is thicker, here laden with dust, and the dim light from the small lanterns barely helps you see the work ahead. The earth above seems to press down with an unspoken threat of collapse. You know this space is fragile, unstable, and that if the earth shifts, even by a fraction, the tunnel could collapse. You know now. The mine feels like a living thing, a monster that feeds off your labor, your sweat, and your suffering. To collapse, it's not just your life at risk, but the lives of everyone around you. The weight of the earth above is a constant presence, the threat of cave-ins always looming like a dark cloud. The work itself is grueling. You spend hours breaking through the stone, hauling chunks of coal, and dragging them through the narrow tunnels. The coal dust is everywhere, coating your skin and sticking to your sweat-soaked clothes. Your arms grow tired, your fingers stiff from gripping your tools. The work taking a toll on your small body. The worst part of this job is how isolated it makes you feel. The deeper into the mine you go, the more alone you become. Your companions are there, working by your side, but they feel so far away in this oppressive darkness. No one can see you, and you can barely see them. You can't even tell the time, as there's no natural light to mark the passage of hours. Everything in the mine feels eternal. like you're trapped in a timeless void, where the only measure of success is how much coal you've moved by the end of the shift. But the worst part is the danger. As much as the work is physically demanding, it's the risk of collapse that fills you with an unsettling fear. You never know when the earth might decide to give way, when a cave-in might suddenly trap you inside, or when a misstep could lead to your end. The risk is never far from your thoughts, and yet you must continue to work because there's no choice, and life and death happen beneath its shadow. So you continue to work. You hear the shout of a fellow miner, their voice a reminder that you're not alone down here, even if the darkness tries to make you feel that way. You don't think of the mine as your enemy, even though it is. You think of it as your only reality, the world in which you must endure and keep working, day after day, for the sake of your family and your future. When you think about the work you do as a child miner, it's impossible to avoid the image of the tools you use, tools that are far too heavy, far too dangerous for hands as small as yours. Yet, these are the same tools that have become necessary instruments in the daily grind of your existence. The pickaxe, the shovel, the sledgehammer, and the coal cart are no longer just objects. They are extensions of your body, worn and familiar, but also a constant reminder of your place in the system. You don't get to choose what tools you work with. The foreman hands them to you, and you make do. The pickaxe is your primary weapon. You use it to break through the coal and rock, chipping away at the earth in an attempt to harvest what little you can. With every swing, you feel the shock reverberate through your tiny hands, but you can't stop, not even for a moment. The weight of the pickaxe makes your shoulders ache, and the repetitive motion makes your arms feel like they're filled with lead. We'll be watching, and the time will be taken off your wages. But the pickaxe isn't your only tool. For smaller tasks, when you have to get into the narrowest of spaces, when you need to move coal from one spot to another, you're given a shovel. The shovel is a child's tool, in the sense that it's a bit more manageable than the pickaxe. But it is still heavy, and using it for hours on end is a physical test in and of itself. Each load of coal you shovel into the cart weighs as much as your own body, and your arms tire quickly from the constant lifting and hauling at the end of your shift. When the mine's gates close, you look at your hands and see the blisters calloused from gripping the tools and the scrapes where the sharp edges of the pickaxe have torn into your skin. There is a resilience in these small hands, a kind of quiet strength you never thought possible for a child. But still, the pain is there. Burden, it's heavy, often filled with coal that you can barely manage to push. Some days, when the coal is too thick, you struggle just to move it from one point to another. The wheels on the cart squeak and groan under the pressure, but the cart doesn't stop. It keeps going, just like you do, because there's no other option. The physical toll of heavy tools that wears you down. It's the constant danger that comes with them. The pickaxe is sharp, and it's easy for a slip of the hand to lead to a serious injury. There are no safety regulations, no one to watch out for you. If you injure yourself, you're sent home for the day, and you'll miss out on whatever meager pay you might have earned. The wages you earn are barely enough to feed your family, and if you fall behind, even for a moment, there are consequences. The tools you work with are as brutal as the mine itself. They don't care that you're just a child, that your muscles are still developing, that you should be running outside, playing, or learning to read. The pickaxe doesn't care that you have dreams of something more than the dirt and coal of the underground. The shovel doesn't care that you should be enjoying the fresh air, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. They are reminders that your work is the only thing that defines you in this world, and yet, despite the toll they take on your small body, there's a strange, quiet pride in the tools you wield. The pickaxe is your tool, your weapon, and your means of survival. It is your connection to the world you were born into. You are not just a child, you are a miner, a small, worn cog in the giant machine that is the coal industry. Without the tools, you wouldn't be able to survive in the world of the mine, but they also trap you in it. Every swing, every load of coal you push into the cart reminds you that your life is not your own, it belongs to the mine, to the endless labor, to the earth that takes and takes without ever giving back. As you continue to work, you can't help but think about what life could have been like if you didn't have these tools, if you weren't bound to this mine. But those thoughts are fleeting. The tools are here. The work is here. You have no choice but to keep swinging, keep shoveling, and keep pushing that coal cart to its destination. The deeper you go into the mine, the more the world above feels like a distant memory. The surface, the sun, and the air are all far away, now replaced by an overwhelming sense of being swallowed by the earth. The coal mines aren't just dark, they're alive with the relentless weight of stone pressing down from above, and the creaking and lingers in the air, filled with fine particles of coal dust that coat your lungs with every breath, and saturated with moisture from the underground moisture that makes the walls slippery and cold. You try to clear your throat, but the dust is already inside you, in your throat, your lungs. Oil lamps hanging from the walls, or the occasional flicker of a torch as someone moves ahead of you. But no matter how close those little flames seem, the darkness feels like it stretches infinitely. It feels as though the earth itself is swallowing you whole, trapping you in a world where the sunlight never reaches. The only time you're truly aware of the time passing is when the bells ring, signaling that it's time for a short rest or for the day's shift to end. But in the meantime, the darkness is your companion. And in this suffocating blackness, you work, you dig, you scrape at the coal, but you can barely see the rocks in front of you. Your hands are covered in soot and dirt, your fingers stiff from gripping your tools. The mine floor is uneven, slippery, and slick with the moisture that seems to seep from the very walls themselves. Every time you lift your foot, it feels like you're fighting against the earth, the ground pulling at you. With every step, there's also the constant fear of the mines collapsing. The thought of the walls of rock caving in, crushing you beneath tons of debris, is always in the back of your mind. You can hear the rumblings of the rocks shifting sometimes, the deep groan of the earth, and it fills you with a sense of foreboding. It's a sound that says danger is imminent, that the walls might come down any second, but the work must continue. The foreman demands that the tunnels remain clear, that the coal be moved. There's no room for hesitation, no time to think about the dangers. You just keep moving, even though every fiber of your being wants to run back to the surface, to feel the sunshine and the fresh air again. But there's no escape. There's no option for rest. Your legs ache, your back hurts, but you've been taught to ignore the pain, to push through, to keep moving no matter what. You've learned to keep your head down and keep working, even when the fear of the mine's danger is suffocating. If you don't move coal, you don't get paid, and your family doesn't eat. In the world of the child miner, there's only the work, the dangerous, tiring work that pulls you down deeper and deeper. into the heart of the earth. Sometimes, when you stop for a moment, you think about the world above. You remember the sunlight, the soft breezes that flow through the trees, and the sounds of birds. You wonder what it would be like to go back to that life, to feel grass underfoot and the warmth of the sun on your face. But then the bell rings again, and you're reminded that there is no going back. There's only the work. There are times when you wonder if the mine is truly alive. It feels as though it has its own heartbeat, its own rhythm, and that rhythm controls everything. The mounds of coal that you push and drag feel as though they are growing, endlessly increasing in weight as they pull you further and further into the earth's belly. There's no end in sight, only the never-ending process of digging, hauling, and digging some more as your shift draws to an end. Your body is exhausted, your bones ache, and your hands are raw from handling the rough tools. But you're not done. The mine doesn't let you rest for long. Even though you can hear the sounds of the day's shift ending, there's still the prospect of another long night to come, filled with the same darkness, the same danger. As you emerge, your body is covered in sweat, dust, and soot. You have no idea what time it is. You don't even know how many hours have passed. All that's left is the feeling of being sucked back into the earth, a place that feels like home, even though it's dangerous, dark, and suffocating. The mine has become your world, and the question isn't whether you'll survive, how long you can keep going. As your day in the mine stretches on, your hands become familiar with the weight of the coal. It becomes a constant, heavy companion, a burden you cannot escape. The rocks seem to multiply, piling higher and higher in your small cart, and with each load, it feels like your body grows weaker under the strain. You shift the coal from one place to another, as though you're moving mountains, though you know you're merely moving small pieces of a much larger whole. The coal is heavy, heavier than you thought it could be. The weight of the rock presses down on your arms and shoulders, making it feel like the entire world is on your back. You push, drag, and lift the heavy coal, your hands calloused and bruised from the constant strain. The act of lifting the coal, an endless repetition, becomes both physical and mental. It takes all your focus to keep going, and yet, every time you finish a task, there is another pile to replace it. The earth itself seems to exhale more coal with every step you take, as though it's a never-ending cycle. The strain on your small frame is evident. The constant bending over, lifting, and dragging puts pressure on your back and legs. You feel the muscles in your arms and legs burn, but you have no choice. The work must continue. If you fall behind, there's no room for mercy. The foreman's eyes are always watching, expecting more, demanding more. If you stop, if you rest for too long, there's a chance your pay will be docked. And if you don't make enough, your family suffers. Despite the weight of the coal, you push forward. You've learned to ignore the burning in your legs and the pain in your arms. Your body aches, but the pain becomes background noise, something you've learned to tune out. The exhaustion becomes normal. You think to yourself, this is just part of the work, part of your role in this grinding system. Every step is a reminder that your body is both the tool and the sacrifice in this relentless cycle. The physicality of the work takes its toll. Your hands are cut and blistered, your skin raw from contact with the rough coal. Your fingers are stiff, unable to properly grasp anything. Even simple tasks become difficult, but you don't stop. You can't stop. The coal has to be moved. and there's no one else who can do it. You are small, but your role in the mine is vital. You notice the other children working alongside you. Their hands are just like yours, blistered, worn, and rough. Some are smaller than you, struggling to carry even the smallest loads, but they, too, must continue. No one dares to complain. It's not allowed. There's no time for weakness in the mine. It's a place where you're measured not by how well you can dream, but by how much you can carry. The weight of the coal doesn't just strain your muscles, it weighs heavily on your mind as well. As you lift each new load, you can't help but think about how much longer you can keep this up. How much longer can your body endure this constant strain? It feels like every time you lift a load of coal, the earth becomes more of a burden. But you're not allowed to stop thinking, not allowed to rest. If you do, it all falls apart. The system, the mine, the work, and your place in it. Despite the endless hours and physical exhaustion, you can't help but find a strange sense of pride in the work. There's something primitive and raw about the coal, and the toilet connects you to something deeper, something fundamental about survival. Each load, each step, feels like a reminder that you are alive, that you matter, even if it's for a brief moment in a world of darkness and dirt. Your labor means something. The pride isn't about the work itself, it's about endurance. You are enduring, day after day, carrying the weight of the coal as if it's a physical manifestation of the burdens you bear. You are alive in the darkness of the mine, enduring the weight and heat that come with each new shift. But then, when the shift is over and you stagger out of the mine, your body shaking with fatigue, you can't help but wonder what is all this for. The coal, the pain, the exhaustion. What do you have to show for it all? As you exit the dark, oppressive mine, the world outside seems like an impossible dream, a distant land of freedom, of light. But tomorrow, you'll return. You always do. Among the many roles that children played in the coal mines, there was one position that was particularly isolating and dangerous: the job of a trapper. The trapper's role was not to dig, to shovel, or to haul the coal, but to open and close the ventilation doors that allowed fresh air into the mine. It might seem like a relatively simple task, but in the dark depths of the mine, it was an essential and life-threatening job. As a trapper, you would spend your hours alone in the dark, waiting for the signals from the miners to open the door, letting them pass through. The task was often monotonous. You would sit by the door, listening to the sounds of the mine, the echo of picks against stone, the groans of the earth as it shifted under the strain of constant digging. It was quiet, except for the sounds of the workers, and often you were left in the silence, completely isolated from the world above. The most difficult part of being a trapper was the solitude and the stillness that came with it. You would often be locked in a small, claustrophobic space, a tiny corner in the mine that felt even smaller because of the lack of light and the ever-present dampness that made the air feel suffocating. You would sit in the dark for hours, unable to see anything but the faint light of your lantern, which often flickered in the damp, suffocating air. But the light was your only companion. The rest of the world seemed to disappear once you were in that dark room. You couldn't see the miners, couldn't hear them, and you couldn't tell how much time was passing. The only signal you had that it was time to open the door was a simple tap from the miner outside, or perhaps a shout through the dark. Just a small communication to let you know that it was time for the next worker to pass through. Timing was essential. You had to open the door at the right moment. Otherwise, the airflow would be disrupted, and the workers would be left to suffer from the lack of ventilation. If you were too slow, the miners would curse you for the delay, and if you were too quick, the workers would be unable to safely navigate through the mine. The job of the trapper also carried a huge amount of danger, as you were at the mercy of the mine's unstable conditions. You were vulnerable in the darkness, often working without anyone nearby to help you if disaster struck, despite the inherent dangers. Being a trapper was also a way to make money for children who couldn't physically handle the more grueling tasks like hauling coal or digging. The role of the trapper offered a way to survive and earn a meager wage. You weren't expected to do the hard work, but you were still contributing in your own way. And for many children, the pay that came with this job was enough to help their families get by. For all the isolation and danger, the role of trapper was seen as essential for keeping the mines operational, and it was one of the few options available to young children looking to contribute. However, the work was far from easy. Sitting alone in the dark, constantly listening for the sounds of the miners, and waiting for hours for the door to open, this was emotionally draining, especially for children who had little understanding of what was going on around them. There was no reprieve, no sense of escape. Every day felt like it was the same, trapped in the mine, waiting, listening, and hoping for the shift to end. The lack of light in the mine made it feel like time stood still. There were no windows to look out of, no way to track the passage of hours. The air would get thicker as the day went on, and the coal dust would settle into every inch of your clothing, your skin, your lungs. The dampness of the mine would seep into your bones, and there was no relief from the cold that settled in your limbs. You'd try to keep your hands warm, but it was nearly impossible. Yet, despite the conditions, you knew that your job as a trapper was crucial. Every time you opened the door, you were helping to keep the mine alive. Though you didn't wield the pickaxe, and you didn't carry the heavy loads, you had your own form of strength, the endurance to survive in the darkness, the resilience to keep working despite the isolation, and the grit to continue even when the task seemed never-ending. You were just another small child, playing a vital role in a system that treated you like an object, something to be used, something to survive until you couldn't anymore. But in those quiet moments, when the mine felt like it was swallowing everything whole, you could think about something beyond the dark tunnels. You could dream, however briefly, about a life outside the mine. But that dream faded quickly as the next miner's knock echoed through the darkness, and you were reminded that you had a job to do. In the bleak underworld of the coal mine, there were no laws to protect children. The age or size of the workers didn't matter. What mattered was the amount of coal moved, the number of hours worked, and whether you could keep up with the adults. The world of child miners was a merciless and unregulated space where children, who should have been in school or playing, were instead pressed into grueling labor, often far too young to understand the consequences. The lack of child labor laws meant that children were routinely exploited, their bodies forced to endure work that no one should have to do at any age. Children as young as 5 or 6 were sent into the mines to work for long hours, performing tasks that would crush even the strongest adults. In this world, there was no escape, no relief from the work that kept families alive, and no one to protect the young workers who bore the most weight of the coal industry. As you labor in the darkness of the mine, you are acutely aware of the fact that you, like all the other children in the mine, are expendable. The owners of the mine don't care about your age, your health, or your well-being. You're just another tool in the production line, a small cog in the grand machinery of the coal industry. There's no such thing as paid sick leave, no time off for an injury. The only thing that matters is whether you can keep working, whether you can keep carrying your burden of coal, no matter how much it hurts. If you can't, there will always be someone else to take your place. You might wonder, how did this happen? Why were there no laws to protect children from such exploitation? The reality is that in the 1800s, child labor was viewed as a normal part of life. In fact, it was commonplace for children to be sent to work at a young age, especially in mining communities, where the work was essential to the family's survival. Many families, already struggling to make ends meet, saw sending children to work as their only option. Child labor was acceptable because it contributed to the family income. But the lack of child labor laws also meant that there was no accountability for the employers who made children work in the mines. While some had the bare minimum of safety regulations, such as ensuring there was enough ventilation in the mine, many coal mines were dangerously unsafe, with walls that could collapse at any time, exposed beams, and no protective equipment for the workers. Later, in the mid-19th century, that people began to question the morality of child labor in mines. In England, the Factory Acts were introduced to regulate the working conditions in factories and mines, including the age at which children could work. But it wasn't until 1842, with the passage of the Mines Act, that the first major restrictions on child labor in mines were implemented. The law banned women and children under 10 from working in coal mines. But even this law was limited in scope. It didn't fully eliminate the problem of child labor or address the dangerous conditions under which children were forced to work, despite the eventual changes. By the time any laws were passed, many children had already suffered permanent damage to their health. Diseases like black lung disease, caused by inhaling coal dust. Their bones were often brittle from years of carrying heavy loads, and many suffered from severe spinal problems due to the unrelenting physical strain. The damage wasn't just physical. The emotional toll of years of exploitation left children with few opportunities to reclaim their childhoods. Instead of playing or learning, they had been bent to the will of the mine. Although some progress was made in the following decades to restrict child labor, it was not until the early 20th century that significant strides were made to protect children from dangerous working conditions across many industries, including mining. These laws, such as minimum age laws, work hour restrictions, and safety regulations, were vital in reducing the exploitation of children in mines. But by the time these changes arrived, the long-term effects of the abuse children had suffered in the mines were already deeply ingrained in the coal communities. As you work in the mine, it is hard to imagine that such changes will come. You are simply trying to get through the day to survive in the harsh world that is your reality. The lifetime of labor you've been sentenced to seems endless, and the idea of laws that might protect you feels distant and unrealistic. But, in truth, back at this period in history and recognize that children should never have had to face such a grim reality. But for you and the other children working alongside you, the only law is the one of survival to make it through the day, and the next, as you continue to carry the burden that's been placed on your small shoulders. In the world of child mining, family ties run deeper than blood. From a very young age, you've been taught that the mine isn't just a place to earn wages, it's a family obligation, a responsibility passed down through generations. Your parents, often former miners themselves, know no other way of life. To them, the mine is both a burden and a necessity, something that feeds the family. You work beside your siblings, your parents, and sometimes your relatives, in a tight-knit, difficult cycle of life that seems almost impossible to escape. The mine has a peculiar way of binding families together, and at the same time, it keeps them trapped in its dark embrace. The work is so all-consuming, so overwhelming, that it's hard to imagine any other life. Children, whether they like it or not, are absorbed into the mining culture from the moment they can walk. You are born into it, and every aspect of your existence is defined by it. Family survival depends on the endless hours spent in the mines. At the end of each long day, when your small body is exhausted, you return to your family's modest home, a cramped, small dwelling that you share with your siblings, maybe even your extended family. There is no room for rest here, no time to reflect on the day's hard work. There are mouths to feed, and the coal you bring home is vital to the family's survival. Your parents don't ask if you're tired or hungry. They simply give you a few bites of whatever food is left and tell you to rest for tomorrow. There is no time for anything else. As you sit down to eat with your family, you see the same tired, worn faces around the table, the faces of children and parents who have been raised in the mine just as you have been. The mine isn't just a job, it's your family's life. There is no escaping the daily grind. Your father, too, has spent countless hours down in the mines, his body worn down by the years of hard labor. Your mother, though perhaps not in the mine, works equally hard in keeping the household running, preparing food, cleaning, and tending to younger siblings. There is a sense of shared sacrifice that pervades the family structure, as each person plays a part in ensuring the survival of the next. Everyone's contributions are critical. Each role, each job, no matter how small, matters. But there's also a deep sadness in this family dynamic. The next generation is always being pulled into the cycle. You've watched your older siblings, who are just a bit further along the path, grow into the same weary, hard-working adults who will likely be doing the same grueling work for the rest of their lives. The hope of a better life seems slim. In fact, the mine grows with you. As you grow taller and stronger, so does the burden of the work. You will take on new tasks, handle heavier loads, and dig deeper into the earth just as your parents and grandparents did before you. It can feel as though there is no escape from the mine, no opportunity to change the fate that has been handed to you. Many children in the mines would carry the weight of their family's legacy for their entire lives. For them, the idea of freedom, education, or play is a distant dream that is too far to reach. The mine is the only life they know. Yet, even with the deep weariness, the shared hardship, there is a strange, unspoken pride in this familial system. You look at your parents, at your mother's worn hands, and your father's tired eyes, and you see how hard they work to give you a chance at survival. In a strange way, the mine becomes a unifying force, bonding everyone together in a shared struggle that becomes a family tradition. You are part of something bigger, something ancient that stretches back across generations of miners. You can't see the future, but you can feel the weight of the past. The older generations of miners pass their knowledge to the younger ones, teaching you how to move the coal, where to find the best seams, and how to handle the tools. It's a knowledge passed on through silent rituals, spoken in short words and quick glances, as everyone knows the value of getting the work done. In many ways, these lessons are as much a part of your family as your mother's lullabies or your father's work songs. But unlike those songs, the lessons of the mind carry a different weight. They aren't about comfort or nurturing. They are about survival, learning how to cope, how to endure, and how to make it through another day of the grind. And so, you continue to carry the burden of the mind, not just for yourself, but for your family. You work in the dark for the same reason your parents did, to ensure that your family has enough to eat, enough to live another day. The family's survival is the ultimate goal, and every member is expected to contribute. It's a system that keeps everyone bound together, caught in the same cycle of hard labor, hardship, and, above all, endurance. In this world, there's no room for the softness of childhood. There's only the weight of family duty and the unceasing task of keeping the cycle alive. The mines, where you and countless others toil away day after day, are not just places of physical exhaustion. They are also fraught with danger, constantly teetering on the brink of disaster. Every moment you spend inside the mine, you are surrounded by the potential for death or injury. The air is thick with dust. The walls seem to threaten collapse at any moment, and the machinery is just one misstep away from breaking down. Yet, despite all the danger, the work continues. Inside the mine, you learn quickly that safety is not a priority. There are no safety guidelines, no rules about how to work without risking your life. Your well-being doesn't matter, not in the eyes of the owners, and certainly not in the eyes of those who have no choice but to keep working. The risk of cave-ins is the most constant and immediate threat. Every time you swing your pickaxe, every time you step deeper into the mine, you feel the weight of the earth above you. The very rock that surrounds you seems to pulse with an ominous rhythm, as if the mine itself is alive, waiting for the right moment to devour you whole. The sound of the earth shifting, the low groans of the rock as it settles, is enough to send a chill through your spine. But you can't stop. You can't leave. There's no choice. The coal needs to be moved. The shifts need to be filled. And if you don't do it, someone else will. In the back of your mind, you know that safety measures were practically non-existent. If a wall collapses or a tunnel becomes unstable, there are no rescue teams, no equipment to save you. Accidents happen all the time, but there's little compensation for the families of the victims. If a child miner is crushed under a falling beam, they're often seen as just another tragic loss, the cost of doing business. The mine owners, the foremen, the overseers, they all carry on, unaffected by the loss of life. For them, you are simply another worker, another replaceable part in the massive machine that is the coal industry. In addition to the risk of cave-ins, there are also the dangers of the machinery used in the mine. Many of the machines used to move coal or dig out seams are old, poorly maintained, and incredibly dangerous. There are reports of miners getting caught in the gears, their limbs crushed or severed in the blink of an eye. But the machines are necessary. Without them, the work would be even slower, even harder. So, despite the dangers, the workers press on. You don't have the luxury of complaining. You don't have the luxury of stopping. Stopping means failure, and failure means the end for your family. The lack of ventilation in many mines also creates dangerous conditions. Gases, like methane, accumulate in the confined spaces, threatening to ignite with a single spark. Explosions are a constant threat as workers continue to dig and shovel, unaware that they are walking on a ticking time bomb. It doesn't take much a spark from a tool, a lightning strike, or even a worker dropping a match, and the mine could go up in flames, taking everyone down with it. And then, of course, there is the coal dust, the fine particles that float in the air and fill your lungs with every breath. Over time, the dust settles in your chest, coating your lungs with a thick, black film. The long-term effects of this exposure are devastating. The disease that comes from breathing in coal dust is called black lung disease, and it's a death sentence. But you can't afford to worry about it, not while you're working, not when you're just trying to survive. You simply keep breathing in the toxic air, day after day, knowing that every breath could be your last. The miners around you cough often, and you've heard them complain about the pain in their chests, but there's no time to visit a doctor. Time is something you don't have in the mine. Your health is secondary to the work. If you stop working, you lose your pay. If you lose your pay, your family suffers. So, you push through the sickness, the pain, and the ever-present danger, because that's all you know. That's what survival looks like in the mines. In the long run, the toll on your body is immense. Many child miners, like the adults they work beside, will spend the rest of their lives grappling with the long-term effects of the work. The early deaths, the crippling diseases, and the injuries are simply part of the cost of doing business. By the time you're old enough to understand the severity of the situation, it's already too late. You've spent your youth in the mines, and now you're living with the consequences. But as a child miner, none of this matters right now. What matters is surviving the day, getting through another shift, and earning enough to bring home to your family. You don't have time to think about the long-term effects. All you can think about is today getting through it. Tomorrow will come, and the cycle will start again. The coal doesn't care about the damage it causes. The mine doesn't care about your life, but you're here, and you're alive for another day, doing what you can to keep your family fed. By now, your body is well accustomed to the grueling toll of the mine. The long hours, the heavy loads, and the constant exposure to the dangers of the dark, dusty tunnels have all left their mark on you. But there is one silent threat that looms. Larger than the rest, the disease that comes from the very air you breathe. The coal dust that fills your lungs with every breath is far more than just an irritant. Over time, it settles deep within your chest, where it gradually builds up into something far more dangerous: black lung disease. You may not have known it at first, but as you spent more and more time underground, the fine dust from the coal began to embed itself in the lining of your lungs. At first, it might have felt like a slight irritation, a cough here and there, a sense of tightness in your chest, but you didn't think much of it. Everyone coughs, right? But soon, the coughing became more persistent, deeper, and harder to ignore. You found yourself waking up in the middle of the night, gasping for air. The shortness of breath, once a mild inconvenience, turned into something more debilitating. But you pressed on, because there was no other choice. At first, you didn't know the full consequences of your condition. After all, the mine doesn't offer you a chance to see a doctor, and even if it did, there would be no time to seek treatment. You were just another cog in the machine, but the disease was always there, silently festering, growing stronger with each passing year. It took years for you to feel the full weight of black lung disease, but by then it was too late. The damage to your lungs was irreversible. The condition, also known as pneumoconiosis, is caused by the inhalation of fine coal dust over an extended period. When you breathe in this dust, the particles become trapped in your lungs, causing scarring and inflammation. Over time, the lungs lose their ability to take in oxygen, and the body becomes less and less able to function as it once did. You feel weak, tired, and short of breath at all times, as though the very air around you is suffocating you. The simplest tasks become monumental feats of endurance. The disease slowly strips you of your strength, and soon, even getting out of bed becomes an overwhelming challenge. The most insidious part of this disease is that it isn't something you'll feel immediately. It's the result of years of constant exposure to the coal dust in the mines. It's a condition that develops slowly, sometimes taking decades before the effects are truly felt. And when you do begin to notice the symptoms, it's already too late. By the time you feel the shortness of breath, by the time you can no longer keep up with the rest of the workers, the damage to your lungs is irreversible. You are already condemned to a lifetime of breathing difficulties, potentially an early death from respiratory failure. But black lung disease isn't the only disease affecting child miners like you. There's also the threat of respiratory infections, tuberculosis, and other diseases caused by the toxic environment of the mines. The coal dust that fills the air is laden with bacteria and other pathogens that thrive in the stagnant, damp conditions of the mine. The walls are constantly sweating, the air is thick with moisture, and the atmosphere is perfect for diseases to take root. Many miners, especially children, develop chronic respiratory issues that last a lifetime. Asthma, bronchitis, and other lung ailments become commonplace, and there's no reprieve from the constant battle to breathe. For the miners, the risk of disease isn't just a personal burden, it's a family burden. When you are sick, the whole family suffers. If you can't work, there's no money coming in. If you can't work, there's no food, no coal to burn for heat. The disease doesn't just take away your health, it takes away your ability to support the ones you love. Families that depend on the labor of children like you are often left in poverty when the miners fall ill. And many mining families don't have the resources to get proper medical care. In the worst cases, the disease leads to death, often at an early age. The grim reality is that child miners didn't have the luxury of living out a full life. The combination of poor working conditions, disease, and neglect made it so that many miners died long before their time. Some miners even found themselves in their early 20s, already crippled by disease, unable to continue working, and left to face a life of pain and suffering. Black lung disease didn't just affect the individuals who worked in the mines, it also had a long-term impact on entire mining communities. As children were born and raised in the mines, they too began to suffer from the same conditions. The effects of child labor were generational, as each successive group of children born into the mining communities was doomed to follow the same path of hard labor and eventual sickness. Over time, reform movements began to gain momentum as workers began to demand safer working conditions and better treatment. While change was slow, the harsh reality of life in the mines led to greater discipliner awareness of the dangers of child labor and the diseases that were rampant in mining communities. It would take decades before meaningful reforms were made, but the legacy of these early mining practices and the toll they took on young lives remains a painful chapter in history. As you continue to work, the weight of disease becomes an inescapable part of your life. The future seems less and less clear as the coal dust settles deep within your lungs, and you're forced to reckon with the consequences of living in this unforgiving world. Your dreams of freedom, of life beyond the mine, become more distant, as you realize that survival is the only thing you can focus on now. While the physical toll of working in the mines is apparent: sore muscles, calloused hands, and damaged lungs, there is also a psychological cost that can be just as devastating. The world of the child miner is one of isolation, exploitation, and constant fear. As you move deeper into the mine, you don't just lose health, you lose a part of yourself, a part of your innocence, and eventually a sense of who you are. When you first started working in the mine, you didn't understand the psychological weight of the job. But as time passes, you start to feel the emptiness that comes from being surrounded by darkness, and the mental fatigue that builds up after each day spent with your face pressed into the coal dust. The constant, grinding labor is soul-crushing. Each day, you wake up and do the same thing: dig, shovel, haul, and repeat. There's little room for rest, little room for thinking, and no space for the joy of being young in this world. Childhood feels like a distant dream, something you've never known and will never experience. Instead of running through fields or playing with friends, you're trapped in a world of grit and grime, a world where every movement is dictated by the need to survive. The psychological strain doesn't just come from the work itself. It comes from the knowledge that this is all there is. The mine is your world, and there's no escape. Every day, you push yourself deeper into it. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to remember who you once were and who you could have been. Over time, you begin to feel a sense of numbness. The fear of the cave-ins, the dust in your lungs, the brutality of the work, it all becomes routine. It becomes easier to shut your mind off, to not think about the danger, because thinking about it is too much. You just keep working, keep moving, keep doing your part. But this mental exhaustion isn't something you can escape. It creeps into your thoughts, your dreams, and even your sleep. When you lie down at night, your body is so tired that it's hard to sleep at all. And when you finally drift off, you dream of the mine, of the black walls, of the tunnels that seem to go on forever. Many children, like you, begin to lose touch with what it means to be a child. Your sense of self-worth becomes intertwined with your ability to perform in the mine. If you're not working, you're failing. And failure doesn't just mean a loss of wages. Your identity becomes bound to the work, to the shovel, the pickaxe, and the coal. You don't matter unless you can carry your weight. The mental toll of this realization is insidious, and it eats away at your spirit. The psychological effects of child mining don't just show up in the form of depression or anxiety. They also show up in more subtle ways. The isolation you feel in the mine, being away from your friends, family, and any form of normalcy, slowly erodes your sense of connection to the world outside. Even when you leave the mine at the end of a shift, you don't feel like you've left it behind. The darkness, the dampness, and the weight of the work follow you wherever you go. You can't escape the mine. It's in your body, in your lungs, in your bones, and in your mind. This isolation, this disconnection from a normal childhood, has lasting effects on your ability to form meaningful relationships in the future. You don't get the socialization you need when you're stuck in the mines for years on end. You don't learn the joys of play or how to form friendships that aren't based on shared hardship. When you're a child miner, Your world is limited to the workplace, the mine, the people you work with, and the fleeting moments of relief that come when you're allowed a break. But even those moments are tainted by the knowledge that the work will always come back. When you're a child miner, you learn to block out the emotions that are too overwhelming. You learn to shut down parts of your humanity to survive. The feelings of fear, sadness, and pain are suppressed as a coping mechanism. But over time, this emotional detachment can lead to long-term psychological damage. Many child miners, once they've grown up, struggle to cope with the mental and emotional scars left by their time in the mines. They become emotionally distant, incapable of forming close relationships, and numb to the world around them. This emotional damage isn't something that can be seen easily. It's not a scar you can touch or a wound that can be healed with a bandage. It's a wound that stays with you forever, buried deep within your soul. The psychological toll of being a child miner is not just about the suffering you experience in the mines. It's about the lasting impact that suffering has on your identity and your mental health long after the mine has taken its toll on your body. Survival in the mine isn't just about the physical labor or the endless hours of digging, hauling, and shoveling. It's about finding a way to cope with the emotional and psychological strain that comes with working in the dark for so long. For many children working in the mines, the struggle for survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about finding any shred of joy or meaning in a world that seems to offer so little each day. You wake up before dawn, already dreading the long hours ahead, knowing that the mine will be waiting for you, ready to swallow you whole. The pain in your body is familiar now, but it never really goes away. Your muscles ache from the constant lifting and hauling. Your hands are blistered and raw from gripping tools far too large for your small hands, and your lungs burn from the coal dust that fills the air. It's a relentless cycle of work that leaves you with little more than exhaustion at the end of the day. But despite the hardships, there are small moments that keep you going. Sometimes you find joy in the simplest of things. A shared smile with another child miner, the brief respite of rest when the shift is over, or the fleeting comfort of knowing that you're surviving alongside others who understand what you're going through. These small moments are what keep you from completely losing yourself in the crushing weight of the work. They are your lifeline in a world that doesn't allow you to stop or rest. Even in the darkest moments of the mine, there is the possibility for connection. You form bonds with the other children who work alongside you. Sometimes they are the only people you truly get to know. The camaraderie that develops in the shared struggle is unlike any other. You don't have time for formal friendships or moments of lightheartedness, but you do have time for solidarity. There's a deep understanding between you and the other children in the mine, an unspoken bond that comes from fighting together to survive in an environment that is actively trying to destroy you. When the workday is finally over and the coal dust has settled, there's still a moment of relief. You make your way back to the small, cramped homes you share with your family. Your body exhausted but relieved to have survived another day. The exhaustion is overwhelming, but it's a relief in its own way because you know you've made it through just like every other day. And when you finally sit down to eat, even though the food is barely enough to sustain you, it tastes a little better simply because you're alive. But the struggle for survival in the mine also teaches you things about yourself. It teaches you resilience, strength, and determination. It shows you what you're capable of, how far you can push yourself, and how you can find a way to keep going, even when everything seems stacked against you. The pain, the suffering, the long hours of hard work, they all become a part of who you are, a part of your identity. And while they can break you down in many ways, they also build you up. But perhaps the greatest lesson the mind teaches you is that survival isn't just about physical endurance. It's about finding joy in the small things. It's about the moments when you pause, if only for a second, and remember that you are more than just a miner, more than just a worker in the endless system. You are human, and even in a place that strips away your innocence, your dreams, and your hope, you still find ways to keep those small sparks of humanity alive. When you look around at your fellow workers, you see the same tired faces, the same exhaustion in their eyes, but you also see something else, a quiet resilience. They are surviving. They are holding on to their own little pieces of joy, whether it's in a shared laugh, a moment of rest, or even just a quiet thought about what life could be outside of the mine. These moments of light in the darkness become your anchor, the thing that keeps you grounded when everything else feels like it's crumbling around. You may never get to see the world outside the mine, but for now, you have the bond of survival with your fellow workers, the understanding that, despite it all, you are still human. And sometimes, that's enough to get you through another day. The coal that you and the other children dig and haul is more than just a resource. It's the lifeblood of the Industrial Revolution. Without it, the machines that power the factories, the trains, and the engines of the industrial age would grind to a halt. The coal you work tirelessly to extract doesn't just fuel the fire that keeps the machines running. It fuels an entire era of transformation, one that is reshaping the world around you. Every shovel of coal you lift, every ounce of dust you breathe in is tied to the larger economic machine of the Industrial Revolution. The coal is used in everything from steam engines to factories, where it powers the new machines that will revolutionize industries across Europe, and cheaper than ever before. It runs the trains that carry goods and people across countries, opening new markets and enabling the spread of industrialization across the continent. As a child miner, you're aware of this on some level. You know that coal is important after all. It's the reason you're in the mine in the first place. But it's hard to truly grasp just how much power the coal you're digging has. You're not thinking about the larger economic system. You're not thinking about how your labor is fueling progress, or how the coal you bring to the surface will be shipped and used to power the growing cities and factories. All you know is that your work is needed, that the coal has to be moved, and that this never-ending cycle of labor will continue, day after day. The Industrial Revolution is reshaping the world, but it is doing so at the expense of people like you. The need for coal is driving the expansion of the mining industry, and in doing so, it is locking you and countless others into a system of exploitation and endless labor. Workers, children like you, are seen as the cheapest labor, their small bodies ideal for fitting into the narrow tunnels that adults cannot navigate. While the industrialists who profit from the coal industry grow richer, those like you, who provide the labor, remain stuck in the mines, working long hours for meager wages, facing danger, disease, and death. The contrast between the booming factories that consume the coal and the mines where children work is staggering. On one hand, there's the growth of modernity, the rise of machines, railways, and factories. On the other, there's the relentless, grinding labor of children like you, whose bodies are breaking down under the strain of the work, and yet the demand for coal keeps growing. As the Industrial Revolution marches forward, the need for coal continues to expand, further entrenching child miners like you in a system that seems impossible to escape. It's a vicious cycle that feeds on itself. The more coal that is needed, the more labor is required, and the more children are sent into the mines to do the dangerous work. The factories need coal to operate, the railroads need coal to transport goods, and the cities need coal to fuel the growth of industrial life. While the coal industry thrives, the lives of children like you remain mired in poverty, danger, and hardship. Your labor is not seen as important. The work you do is simply a means to an end, essential but invisible part of the larger economic machine that is driving the world forward. The benefits of industrialization are not shared equally. Wealth and power flow to those who own the factories and the mines, while you and your fellow miners are left behind. Your small hands working in the darkness to fuel an industrial revolution that will never benefit you. But as a child miner, you're focused on survival, getting through the day, and earning enough to support your family. You don't think about the larger impact of your labor, or how it's helping to fuel the rise of the modern world. You simply do your job, day after day, because that's the only way you know how to live. The industrialists, the factory owners, and the politicians may be dreaming of a new world fueled by coal. But for you, the reality is much more immediate. It's about the here and now, about doing the work, carrying the weight of the coal, and getting through another long day in the mine. You've heard stories about how the wealthy are getting richer off the backs of workers like you. But the idea of change feels so far out of reach. In the darkness of the mine, you're not thinking about the wealthy factory owners or the progress of society. You're thinking about getting through the next hour, the next shift, the next day. You can't afford to think about the larger world because the work is all-consuming, and yet, in some ways, you are part of that larger world. The coal you move today is going to power the factories, the machines, and the cities that will shape the future. Your labor is part of the very foundation of industrial progress. But for you, in this moment, there is no progress. There is only the now and the coal, and the work that must be done to survive, despite the darkness, the dust, and the constant physical and emotional toll of your labor. You can't help but wonder what life could be like outside the mine. You often find your mind drifting, even in the middle of the most exhausting shift. Two thoughts of a better life, a life that doesn't revolve around coal, grime, and grinding labor. There is a small part of you, a part that still holds on to hope, that dreams of a world beyond the dark, oppressive tunnels where you've spent your youth. These dreams are fleeting, moments of escape that come and go like wisps of smoke. In the mine, you don't have the luxury of longing for a life outside. There is no time to dream. The work is too demanding, the hours too long, and the danger too constant. But every now and then, in the quiet moments when the work slows down, or when you're taking a brief break, your mind wanders to the life you could have. You imagine freedom, not the kind that comes with the end of a shift, but the kind that comes from living without the burden of constant labor. In your mind, you picture yourself playing outside, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face, running through the fields, not hunched over with a shovel in your hand, not feeling the weight of the coal on your back. You imagine a life where you could go to school, where you could learn, dream, and grow a life where you could be a child again. But those thoughts are often short-lived. You push them aside as quickly as they come, because you know that the reality of your situation is much more immediate. The mind doesn't care about your dreams. The foreman doesn't care about your future. Survival is all that matters now. If you don't work, if you don't carry that next load of coal, you don't eat. Your family relies on the small wages you earn from this back-breaking labor, and every day in the mine is a battle to earn enough to survive. There's no time to wonder what could be, yet, despite the harshness of the world you live in, there are small moments when those dreams come to life. In the evenings, after the day's work is done, you and the other children share stories of the world outside, of what life could be like if you didn't have to work in the mines. You talk about running in the fields, about trees and flowers, about freedom. In these moments, it's as if the mind disappears for a while, and for a brief instant, you are no longer a child miner. You're just a child, imagining the life that was never meant for you. But those dreams are fragile. They're hard to hold on to for long, especially when you have to wake up the next morning and face another shift in the dark, another day of work in the coal-filled tunnels. The harsh reality of the mine quickly chokes out the dreams, and you find yourself back in the cycle, digging, hauling, and surviving. Still, even in the most brutal moments of your labor, you cannot completely let go of the idea of a better life. It's a silent rebellion against the system, a quiet way of telling yourself that you are more than just a worker in the coal mines. There's a part of you that still believes that someday you might escape, that the work will end, that the mine will not have the final say in your life. The reality, of course, is much more complicated. You know that many of the older miners, those who have spent decades in the coal mines, don't have the luxury of dreaming anymore. The mine has worn them down, physically and mentally. The exhaustion, the disease, and the endless repetition have crushed their spirits. But you still hold on to the hope that there is something beyond the mine, that there is something better waiting. If only you can survive long enough to reach it. The dreams, however small and fleeting, are important. They are the light that keeps you going, the vision of what might be possible if you can just hold on. They are a reminder that you are still human, that you still have the capacity to hope, to dream. They give you the strength to keep working, even when it feels like the darkness of the mine will consume you whole. But as you continue your work, day after day, you begin to understand that dreams are not enough. Survival is what matters. Now getting through each shift, surviving the dangers, enduring the exhaustion, and hoping for something better on the other side. In the oppressive, grinding monotony of life, as a child miner, it's no wonder that many of you seek mental escapes, ways to deal with the harshness of the work and the relentless demands of the mine. It's not just your body that is being drained. Your mind and spirit are just as worn down by the endless repetition and the constant threat of danger. To cope, you develop certain mechanisms, ways of blocking out the pain, the fear, and the isolation that define your daily existence. You numb yourself to the exhaustion, the physical toll, and the oppressive weight of the work. One of the most common ways to cope is by retreating into your imagination, creating a mental space where the coal, the dust, and the darkness don't have control over you. Some of you imagine running through the fields, where you're not shackled by the weight of the coal, where the sun warms your skin and you can breathe in fresh air. It's a fantasy, of course, a world that only exists in your head, but sometimes in the moments when you pause to catch your breath, when the pickaxe is at rest and the coal is stacked high, you can close your eyes and dream about something better. These thoughts may last only a few seconds, but they are a precious respite from the harshness of reality. Others may retreat into the companionship of their fellow miners. In this world of crushing labor, your shared struggle becomes a bond that transcends the physical work. You talk to each other, telling stories, sharing jokes, and distracting yourselves from the endless labor. Laughter, however strained, becomes a way to momentarily escape the terror of the cave-ins, the ever-present risk of injury, and the impossible work that lies ahead for many. This social connection is one of the few things that keeps them going. When you see your fellow workers, you don't just see people doing the same job, you see comrades, those who share your struggle. It's these brief moments of connection that allow you to keep going, even when everything else seems like it's falling apart. When the work is overwhelming, these fleeting moments of shared humanity offer a brief reminder that you are not alone. In the darkness of the mine, the camaraderie of fellow workers becomes a source of comfort, a much-needed relief from the isolation and despair that otherwise permeates the tunnels. Despite the isolation you experience in the mine, you also learn to rely on your inner strength. Resilience becomes second nature. You might not have a choice but to work, but you do have a choice in how you handle the stress, the physical pain, and the emotional toll of it all. Over time, you develop a mental toughness that helps you endure. You learn to push through the pain, the fatigue, and the darkness, knowing that each day survived is a victory. Still, there are moments when the weight of the world feels too heavy. The reality of the work settles in the endless cycle of labor, the toll on your body, the disease that lurks beneath the surface of every shift. And when those thoughts become too much to bear, you learn to push them aside. It's easier to focus on the immediate task at hand, the next load of coal, the next shift, the next moment when you can breathe without the crushing weight of the work on your shoulders. Some of the older miners might turn to alcohol to numb the pain. The alcohol dulls the edges of the suffering, even if only for a short time. But for you, as a child miner, the relief comes from the small moments, the fleeting seconds when you can escape the mines, even if only in your mind. The world outside may seem like a dream, but it's a dream that fuels your will to survive. You need it. It's the fuel that keeps you going, even when everything else is lost. For the children who are new to the mine, the emotional toll is overwhelming. The first days are the hardest. You're scared, unsure of what's expected of you, uncertain of how to handle the harsh conditions. But over time, you learn the rhythm of the mine. You learn to hold your head down, to focus on the work, and to ignore the noise and the stress. This is your world now, and if you don't adjust to it, you won't survive it. The world of the mine is a harsh one, but it's also the only world you know, and as long as you survive, you'll keep coping. The methods of escape may be simple: dreaming of a better life, sharing stories with fellow workers, finding solace in your own inner strength, but they are what allow you to keep going. Each day, you find a way to get through. You find a way to endure, and in that endurance lies your true power. In the midst of hardship, exhaustion, and suffering, there's a small, flickering sense of hope that survives deep inside you. It's hard to hold on to this hope, especially when each day in the mine feels like an eternity of pain and fatigue. But somehow, despite everything, You find it perhaps in the quiet moments before the shift starts, or in the fleeting thoughts of a life beyond the mine. The life you live now is harsh and unforgiving, but there are moments when you dream of a different future one, where you're not just a child miner, carrying the weight of the coal on your shoulders. It's not a dream you have time to indulge in very often, but sometimes it bubbles up unexpectedly, like a breath of fresh air in the dark tunnel of the mine. As a young miner, you are just beginning to understand the reality of what the work means, but you also have a long life ahead of you. It's the hope of change that helps you endure the hardest days, when your body aches and your lungs burn from the coal dust. You've seen the older miners, those who have been in the system for years, and you know they carry a different kind of burden. Their strength is rooted in experience, but their hope is often dimmed by years of toil. The older generation has been crushed by the weight of exploitation, their bodies failing them as a result of decades spent working in the mines. For them, change seems impossible. The life they lead is inevitable. They are trapped in the system, with no way out. But for you, the story is different. You are still young, still learning, still holding onto that fragile idea that things could be better. Maybe you don't have the power to change your world today, but you can dream. You can hold on to the possibility of change, even if that change is distant. As you watch the older miners, you wonder if they ever felt the same spark of hope when they were your age. Did they ever imagine a world where children didn't have to work in the mines? Did they ever think that they might one day be free from the darkness? In the back of your mind, you know that the mining industry won't change overnight. You are aware of the systems that exploit children, of the factory owners who see your labor as nothing more than a way to turn a profit. You know that the world doesn't care about children like you. Their hard work, their pain, and their suffering are just part of the machine that powers the economy. But there are moments when you hear whispers of change laws being passed in other parts of the world, people talking about the rights of workers, and how the abuses of child labor might one day come to an end. It's not much, but it's enough to keep that spark of hope alive. For many miners, the reality of life in the mine is all they know. But as a child, you still have the potential to shape your own destiny, even if that means fighting for the chance to be more than a miner. Perhaps you can be a voice for those who have been silenced by the constant demands of the coal industry. Perhaps you can be part of the movement that will change the system, a system that has taken so much from you, but that you still refuse to accept as your fate. Change won't happen overnight, but it will start with people like you young miners, who have known nothing but hard labor, but who also possess the fire to demand more. You may not have the strength of the older miners, but you have the vision that comes with youth, a vision of a better world, one where children can be children, and where child labor is no longer the norm. Though you don't know how or when the change will come, you take solace in the fact that, for the first time, you believe it's possible. The idea that the mines could one day close, that children like you won't have to toil away in the darkness forever, fills you with a strange sense of hope. It's not a hope that can fix everything overnight, but it's enough to keep you moving forward, enough to keep you from succumbing completely to the weight of the world in the dark tunnels. Amid the pain and exhaustion, there is always the possibility of something better. And that small spark, that tiny flame of hope, is what allows you to keep surviving day after day in the face of impossible odds. You are still alive, And while the mine may take so much from you, it cannot take your dreams. Those you hold close, and in those dreams you find the strength to keep going, one shovel full of coal at a time. As the days pass, you begin to realize that the change you've been hoping for, the possibility of a better life outside the mine, seems further and further out of reach. The dreams of freedom and progress fade into the background, drowned out by the harsh realities of the mine. You hear the occasional whispers of reform, the stories of advocates fighting for child labor laws and workers' rights. But those stories feel like distant echoes, ideas that don't seem to reach you in the depths of the mine. The mining system remains unyielding. The mine owners continue to grow richer, while those who actually work in the mine, children like you, are forced to labor in ever-worsening conditions. The promise of laws that could protect you from such brutality seems like a far-off dream, one that doesn't quite align with the cold, hard reality you face every day. The mine, the work, and the endless cycle of labor all continue, indifferent to the debates happening in the world above. Despite the glimmers of hope that briefly flared in your mind, you come to terms with the fact that change isn't something you can rely on. Reform may come for other children in other parts of the world, but not here, not in the mine where you've spent your entire life. You are trapped in a system that feeds off your labor, and there is no one to advocate for you. You have no voice, no way to demand that things change. The owners of the mine may recognize that child labor is unsustainable, but they don't act on it. Regulations might exist on paper, but they don't affect you or the other children who work the mines. In fact, the idea that anything will change feels almost comical. The pressure to produce is constant, and the demand for coal is as great as ever. The need for cheap labor only increases as the world around you moves further into the industrial age. The world of machines, the rise of factories, and the expansion of the railroad system all depend on the coal you dig out of the earth. The wealth generated by coal mining and industrial expansion has little to do with you. The owners reap the benefits, while you and your family are left with the bare minimum just to survive. In the mine, you don't see the benefits of the revolution. You are the fuel for a system that profits off your labor. And in return, it offers you nothing but exhaustion and suffering. You may try to cling to the hope of change, but as time passes, you begin to see that it's not coming. The laws that would protect you don't reach the mines, and those who might speak out against the system are drowned out by the need for coal. The power of the mine owners, the foremen, and the factory owners keeps them in control. And despite the occasional protest or petition, it feels like nothing will change. In this environment, there is no room for hope or dreams. The mine doesn't care about your potential, your ambitions, or your desire for something more. The mine simply takes your body, your time, your youth, and in the end, it will take your life. Your health deteriorates, your lungs fill with coal dust, and you know deep down that this work, this grind, will destroy you long before you reach old age. There's no escape from the system. The mine is a machine that swallows everything in its path. And if you're caught in it, there's no way out. The realization that the system will never change hits you like a heavy weight. It's not just about the work anymore. It's about the life you've been given. Your body is weakened, your mind is hazy, and your dreams seem further out of reach than ever before. There's no end in sight. Each day bleeds into the next as you continue the endless cycle of work, sleep, and more work. But in the quiet moments, when you're exhausted and just trying to survive, there's a bitter realization. Survival is all you've been given. You don't get to dream. You don't get to escape. You just endure. And even that sometimes feels like too much as the years pass. You begin to understand something deeply uncomfortable. The system is built to keep people like you working in the mines. It doesn't care if you live or die. It doesn't care if you have a family or if your body is broken by the endless work. It doesn't care about your humanity. What it cares about is how much coal you can move, how much labor you can give, and how long you can continue until you can't give any more. The sad truth is that the change you once believed in is not going to come in your lifetime. You will likely spend your entire life in the mine or die young, your body broken by the unrelenting labor. You are caught in a system that has no place for you outside of work and no concern for what it takes from you. You will live and die in the darkness, your dreams crushed by the weight of the coal. But as a child miner, you don't stop. You can't, because survival is all that matters. And as long as you can keep your body moving, as long as you can carry the load, you will keep going, because there's no choice but to endure. The cycle of labor in the mine doesn't just affect you, it's a cycle that stretches across generations. Your parents, your grandparents, and perhaps even your great-grandparents have all worked in the same mines, in the same conditions, doing the same back-breaking work. The legacy of the mine is built on the bodies of those who came before you, and in turn, you will pass it down to the next generation. The mine isn't just a place, it's a way of life, a brutal, unyielding force that traps families in a perpetual cycle of labor, poverty, and suffering. Your own parents grew up in the mines. Your father, who now spends his days shoveling coal, was once a child, just like you, entering the mine at a young age, learning the harsh realities of the job as soon as he was old enough to hold a pickaxe. Your mother, though not a miner herself, was raised in the same environment, with a father who worked in the tunnels and a family that relied on the coal for survival. She understands the cycle, the endless repetition of the work, the lack of opportunity to escape, and the feeling of being bound to the earth that demands so much. The idea of change, of a different life, doesn't feel like it applies to you or your family. It's a concept that feels distant, almost foreign. Your family has been living this life for generations. The mining communities have been built on the backs of those who worked in the deep, dark tunnels. The families that live near the mines share the same struggle, the same hardship. There is no outsider. There's no way out. The mine is where you were born, and it's where you will die. In the mornings, as you make your way to the mine alongside your fellow workers, you see the same faces, familiar, worn and tired, and you know that each of them has their own story. Some of them have been here for decades, their bodies showing the wear and tear of the mine, while others, like you, are just beginning to understand what it means to live this life. There is an unspoken bond between all of you. You share the same experience, the same burden, and yet, for all the hardship, there's a sense of connection that ties you together. This shared struggle becomes part of your identity. The mine has a strange way of marking time. When you're down in the tunnels, time loses its meaning. The hours blend into each other, and there's no real sense of beginning or end to your day. There is only the work. The mine doesn't care about your plans or dreams. It's indifferent to your hopes for a better life. It only cares that you keep digging, keep moving the coal, keep feeding the machine. Yet, despite the monotony, there are moments when you can glimpse the life that exists outside of the mine, though they're fleeting. They still manage to give you something to hold on to. You might see a bird fly past one of the air vents, or catch a brief glance of the sun through the small cracks in the mine's surface. Those glimpses of the world above are like reminders of something better, something that's not so far beyond your reach. But those reminders are always short-lived, because when the work starts again, the mine pulls you back in, and you're once again swallowed by the darkness. You can't help but think about the next generation, about the children, who will one day be sent into the mines just as you were. Your younger siblings, the children of your friends and neighbors, they will follow in your footsteps, becoming part of the legacy that is tied to the mine. It's a cycle that never ends. The idea that they could escape is almost laughable. After all, the mine has claimed everyone before you, and it will continue to claim everyone who comes after. It is life, and it is death, all at once. But there is something about the next generation that stirs something deep inside you, a desire to protect them from the same fate. You can't change your own future, but maybe, just maybe, you can protect them. There's a part of you that hopes, deep down, that your children will never have to work in the mines. Maybe they'll have the chance to dream, to learn, to live a life that's not dictated by the unrelenting cycle of coal. But that dream feels fragile, a fleeting thought that slips away when you realize how ingrained the system is. The generational nature of the work in the mine is undeniable. It's a trap that holds families in its grip, generation after generation. The mines don't just consume your body, they consume your future, your legacy, and your hope. The coal that you dig today will be used to fuel the machines that drive the world forward, but it won't free you. It won't free the generations that come after you. The cycle of exploitation will continue, and all you can do is play your part. But in the quiet moments, those rare moments when the work slows down and you can briefly lift your head from the task you dream of a future that doesn't depend on the coal, a future where your children are free from the dark, oppressive world of the mines. You dream of a day when freedom isn't just a fleeting thought, but a real possibility. And though the world around you may seem bleak, that dream is the one thing that keeps you going, for yourself, for your siblings, and for the future that you hope one day to build beyond the reach of the mind. As you grow older and spend more years in the mines, you begin to see the true brutality of the system that has been placed before you. The mine owners, the investors, the factory bosses, all have one goal: to make as much profit as possible, regardless of the human cost. You and the other workers are nothing more than tools in this vast, unforgiving machine that doesn't care about your health, your well-being, or your life. The world above the mine is full of wealth and progress. You hear about it from the factory owners, from the managers, from the men in charge of the mines. They talk about growth, expansion, and the future of industry. But for you, down in the mine, that future seems unattainable. It's a future that has no room for people like you, no place for children who dig coal to fuel the machines of industry. The mine owners never see you as a person. To them, you're simply a worker, an instrument to be used and replaced. If you get sick, if you get injured, if you die, it doesn't matter. There are always more children to replace you. The cost of replacing a worker is less than the cost of maintaining your health. Profit is their priority. Survival is yours. The brutality of the system becomes clearer with each passing day. The mine's machinery is old, its maintenance negligent, and yet the work keeps going. You and your fellow miners are pushed harder and harder with no concern for your safety or health. You work until your body can no longer keep up, until your spirit is drained, and then, when you are no longer useful, you are simply cast aside, replaced by the next generation of workers who will fill the same role you once did. The miners who have been in the industry for decades understand this better than anyone. They've seen the cycle repeat itself over and over again. They know that no matter how hard they work, no matter how many coal seams they dig, the system is designed to wear them down. You hear their stories of how they started as children, just like you, how they were pushed to work at young ages, how they aged prematurely because of the toll the work took on their bodies. Their hands are calloused and gnarled, their faces lined with the years of hard labor. And as you look at them, you begin to see your own future, one that is tied to the mines, one that is shaped by the system of exploitation. The worst part is that this system isn't just accepted, it's normalized. It's ingrained in the culture of the mine. The children working alongside you have no idea that there's a world outside. This is the life they've known from birth, and they don't believe there's any possibility of a different future. It's hard to blame them. After all, it's all you've known too. Your entire life has been shaped by the reality of the mine, the hard labor, the long hours, and the ever-present danger. You are trapped in the cycle, and you can't see a way out as you work. You begin to understand that the system isn't just designed to exploit workers, it's designed to keep them subjugated. The children are forced into the mines at a young age, not just because the work needs to be done, but because the system thrives on keeping workers young and easily controlled. You are easier to manipulate than adults, more likely to accept the grind of labor, because it's the only life you've ever known. And when the body breaks down after years of hard work, there's always a new generation of children ready to take your place. The cycle continues. Children are born. They enter the mines, they work, and then they grow old before their time, only to be replaced by the next generation. The mine feeds on their labor, on their youth, on their dreams. It takes away their future, and in exchange, it gives them a paycheck that will barely keep their families alive. The system is built to exhaust the workers and keep them dependent on the owners for their livelihoods. Independence is impossible. Freedom is a distant dream. As you think about the lives of your fellow workers, the sense of hopelessness deepens. You realize that your future is already written for you, just as it was for those who came before you. You will work in the mines for the rest of your life, until your body is broken down, your health destroyed, and your youth stolen from you. And then, when you can no longer work, someone else will take your place. The machine will continue, and the lives of the children who follow in your footsteps will be just like yours, trapped in the system, destined for the mine and destined to suffer. This understanding makes the work harder, but it also makes it clearer. You know now that survival is the only goal. Change seems impossible, and the system will continue to crush those like you for as long as coal is in demand. The best you can do is get through the day, keep working, and somehow hold on to your humanity in the face of it all. After everything, the years of labor, the pain, the suffering, you might begin to wonder if there's an end to this never-ending cycle of work. The mine feels endless, like a dark pit that swallows you whole each day, a place with no light at the end, no hope for escape, But what if there was a way out? You can feel the tiredness deep in your bones. The endless days of hard labor, the endless hours spent in dark tunnels with the weight of the coal on your back and the heavy toll on your lungs. And as time goes on, it feels as though the mine has become a part of you. It has consumed your youth, your health, and your future. It's easy to think that the life you lead now is the only life you will ever know, that the mine will always be your home, and the coal will always be your livelihood. But the world outside the mine is changing. The industrial landscape that has grown around you is not static, it's shifting, evolving. Reforms, though slow and hard-fought, are beginning to take shape. Though the change you've been waiting for may seem out of reach, there is still hope on the horizon. People are starting to realize that the way things are, the exploitation of child labor, the brutal working conditions, the lack of safety is unsustainable. There are whispers of laws being passed, of movements gaining momentum, and of the possibility that children like you might one day be freed from this grinding wheel of labor. But, in the present, it's hard to imagine that change will come soon enough to make a difference in your life. You've been working in the mines for so long, and the years of suffering have taken their toll. You're tired, your body is broken, and your dreams of escape seem like distant memories. How can you hold on to the hope of a better life when the system that sustains you is so deeply entrenched? How can you believe in change when it feels like the mine is the only reality you've ever known? And yet, change is possible. It may not come in time to save you, but it may come to save others' children like you, who will one day have the chance to grow up without being trapped in the suffocating world of the mines. The fight for children's rights, for safer working conditions, for the abolition of child labor, these movements are starting to gain ground. Slowly but surely, society is waking up to the cruelty of the system that has existed for so long. The reforms may be difficult, and they may come too late for many of those who have already been damaged by the mine, but they will eventually come. For now, your role in this world is still to survive. You continue working because there is no other choice. Every day you face the harsh reality of your life in the mine, and you fight to keep going. But even in the darkest moments, there is a flicker of hope because the world is changing. And though you may never fully see that change, the work you do, the resilience you show, and the struggles you face will contribute to something bigger than you. The future may not look the way you want it to, but that doesn't mean it won't be better for others. The children who follow in your footsteps, who will one day take your place in the mines, may one day be able to live without the shackles of labor. They may have the opportunity to dream, to play, to learn, and to live lives free from the suffocating weight of the mine. And as hard as it may be, you can find a certain peace in knowing that your suffering might help forge the way for their freedom. But for now, you endure. You endure because there is no other choice. You endure because that's what survival requires. The mine doesn't care about your hope, your dreams, or your future, but you care. You care because, despite everything, you still have a small spark of humanity left. And that spark, even if it seems small, is something the mine can never take away from you. So as you finish another grueling shift, you wipe the dust from your face, straighten your back, and remember that, in some small way, you are still fighting. You are still alive, and you still have the will to endure, to survive, and to dream even, if only for a moment, of a world that could be better. Now, as you head back to your family, to your home, and to your bed, you let yourself rest. You know tomorrow will be the same. The mine will be waiting. But tonight, you hold on to your dreams, and, for a brief moment, the darkness is a little less heavy.